Alright, welcome back again everybody. This is just going to be a little gameplay video. It's going to be a little bit long because I'm down to the last 5 races in both the Pro-Am and the Pro Series, and then I have one race left to complete McLaren Generations. So I'm going to run through each of those, and then that'll probably be it, but we'll see where it goes. If you hear me typing or anything, I'm at my computer, so we'll get to that Classic Skyline Challenge in just a minute. Alright, let's see what we have here. I actually have my phone in airplane mode now. I'll probably have to take it out for a little while. And I don't have it there because I want to try to cheat the system or anything. It's just to keep from getting like a phone call or something while I'm recording. So here we go. A Cup at Dubai. You can see the car's fully serviced. For this one, I ran through it with the service in the green because it only requires just and I'm actually going to put it in tilt A, just being a little bit lazy. I ran this one in the green because it only takes one. You only have to watch one ad in order to get through the entire service. So something feels really strange about my device right now, but I guess we'll see how it goes. Not sure what's up, but anyway, this is actually a fun little car. It's obviously not a terribly good car. It's not a fast car. I'll show you some of the custom work I did on it in a minute. Maybe with the next race, before the next race. Really fun car to drive. Although, as I've said, it's really slow. I don't think I'll actually worry about bot control on these races because it just doesn't matter. Not when running the car with the service in the green. This is really the first truly free car that I've seen in since I've been playing the game. I know some of them you've been able to get for very cheap previously. I mean, the Aston Martin, from the 500 was, all but free. Probably 700,000, 800,000 race dollars, and then I think it was 45 gold for me to skip one of the goals. I actually like this little track here at Dubai. It's probably my most favorite track at Dubai. This little oval thing. It's great when they do the overtaking race team events because the laps are so short. This one may actually not be all that conducive to it because it's it's so long. the key with those overtaking events is you want to be able to get as many overtakes as possible in as short a time as possible. And so this one will be kind of okay, but somebody, I think somebody on Real Racing Chat Lounge was joking about this car because one of the races in here is a 6-lap race at Indianapolis on the road course, and it's just, the race just feels like it never ends. You know, I joked that I ordered food from the local Chinese shop. I was acting like I had it delivered to my race car, was the idea. I said it took so long to finish the race that I ordered Chinese food, had it delivered to my race car, and finished the food before the race was over. It was a really long race. It had to be 10 minutes because I've got to think the laps there were 1 minute 45 seconds each, at least. And it was really not an enjoyable race. I like long races in this game, but I don't really like long races in a car that is going as slow as this one is. And here we are. I guess I'll slow down a little bit to get to the finish line. But running in airplane mode with only computer bots, I don't think it'll be an issue. I can't actually see myself coming back around to run races in this car. I mean, maybe if there's a race team event or something, it's an enjoyable car. You know, it's just not, it's not anything spectacular. So there we go, first race done. 5 minutes and 29 seconds. I think when I said I ordered Chinese food, I think I said I ordered Peking duck, an obvious attempt at humor based on my new avatar. Let's see how far that takes the service down. Okay, not very far at all. And on we go. Silverstone, 3 laps. This is not actually going to be a very fast race either. I always wonder why we still include this the 2009 circuit at Silverstone, since in reality it doesn't exist anymore. The circuit that comes off the new pit straight and then connects back, I mean, it doesn't, you can't run it. It's not there. I'm actually going to try to really keep this one on the track so that I can make sure it doesn't take the service down into the red. Because 3 laps is, you know, it's fairly substantial. If you haven't noticed, the game, it deteriorates the bars of service on the car much faster if you are, you know what, I should have spun him out, I think. But anyway, it deteriorates the bars of service much faster if you're on the curbs or in the grass. Obviously if you're in the grass, but it does it if you're on the curbs much more as well. even though... Now see, what you just saw right there is one of the things that I like least about some of the bot behavior. And I think it changed after the McLaren update, and it's gotten to the point that they make moves that are foolish, that no one in their right mind would make. They just blatantly cut down the track. They almost do an S-turn going into some of the corners. I think one of the places that it's, you know, most blatant is at Hockenheim, but, you know, the car just apparently did it right there. Didn't really want to, you know, spin the car like that. Obviously, I lost a position back. So this is the main straight for us. The section that we just came through, that's the section that you really, you know, can't drive anymore. That turn right there, you can take flat out. Okay. Have a nice day, Mr. Forts. So you can take that turn flat out in this car, which is interesting. There's not many cars in the game that and I'm sorry, I had a little pause in my brain function there or something. Not many cars in the game can take that turn flat out. It's just how it is. I guess I'm trying to run this race a little bit cleaner than normal. I'm trying not to be too crazy, you know, on the videos. I am being a little bit lazy, running with tilt A and low steering, low brake assists. I've actually started doing that recently, just because, you know, it's just as much fun for me to do it like that as it is to try to run with no assists and you know, tilt B and everything. You know, I like playing the game regardless of what the assist setup is, so I can do it. Tilt A, in spite of what, you know, some people want to try to say, tilt A is definitely the fastest way to race the cars, but it's not. When you have all the assists turned off, it's more difficult to get used to. So most of the guys who are at the top of the page for the weekly time trials, they'll run tilt A, but, you know, they also spend 8 or 10 hours running the time trial race every week, you know. And in reality, at that point, it can't be about the gold. Well, I mean, I know it's not, because I'm on a race team with a couple guys who are, you know, consistently Group A. It's not about the extra gold that you get from being Group A over Group B, even though now it is really good, because you get it's 600 gold for Group A for however long it lasts, as where it was just 300. So they've doubled the rewards, and they've doubled them all the way down the charts. So that's good. But most of the people who I know who run Group A consistently, they don't do it for the gold. They do it for the pride. You know, one of the guys who's consistently 5th in the world, or not necessarily 5th, but top 5 in the world, Vinny T, if you look at him, Um, you know, he's stated that he doesn't do it for the gold. He does it for the pride of being in the top 5 of the world. So, um, let's see what we have. Looks like we're still in the red. I may actually look through these races. Well, you know what? It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to get... I can definitely get that one without going into the red. Yeah, okay, 4 laps at Laguna Seca is going to take it into the red, and then 4 laps at Hockenheim. Okay. I think I'm actually going to do this Laguna Seca race first because, well, on a rolling start, that's interesting. I don't know if I've ever done a rolling start at Laguna Seca. The reason I did this one out of order is because even with the double service for being fully upgraded, I'm not certain that 4 laps at Laguna Seca wouldn't take the service into the red. I know that 4 laps at, or the 5-lap race at the short course at Hockenheim will not come close to taking the car into the red for service. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this one. This should actually be a good evening. I mean, obviously I've planned this one out, you know, because I wanted to do this live and then decided to record it, because doing a live, you know, stream is more difficult than just being able to sit down and record it. But I'll get the gold reward for 100% completion on this, 100% completion on the Group A Grand Tour, the 50 gold reward for the sponsor deals in Group A, and then I'll get whatever the reward is for finishing McLaren Generations. So it's 100% completion there. And that's actually going to be a good race. I saved the Le Mans race, 6 laps there. I actually think the P1 or the FXXK, those are just about the slowest cars that are enjoyable to run on that track. Although actually, I guess the GTE cars, the Porsche 911 RSR, the Aston Martin, and the Ford and the Ferrari, I guess those cars are a little slower than the McLaren, but and those are actually enjoyable to drive there. But you know, anything else, you know, more than 1 lap at Le Mans it's just terrible. You know, it's just so slow. I don't remember if there was a race there in this car. I think maybe there was a speed snap or something there, but I can't remember if there was an actual race. And if there was, it would have just been, you know, just insufferable. Worse than the Indianapolis race. Speaking of Indianapolis, if you're not watching, I'm recording this one about a week and a half now, I think it is. I'm bad with dates, but I think it's a week and a half before the Indianapolis 500. So, and obviously you're watching this on YouTube, so if you turn over to the IndyCar channel, they are actually doing live streams every day of all the practice and that sort of thing from Indianapolis, getting ready for the 500. Obviously a big deal there this year. You have Fernando Alonso, the world champion F1 driver, coming over to run the 500 this year. So, that's a very big deal. It's been a long time since, anyone has come over from F1 to IndyCar. I know obviously Juan Pablo Montoya is driving there now, but he's sort of a unique case because he ran IndyCar or Indy Racing League, whatever it was called at the time. He ran there for a number of years. Then he went to F1. And then he came over and went to NASCAR and had a not unsuccessful, but not a terribly successful career in NASCAR. And now, of course, he's back running Indy cars. But, the last Formula One drivers that I can think of that came over to run IndyCar is really going back to the 90s, even the 80s, with Emerson Fittipaldi and Nigel Mansell. Those are the only ones I can remember. I can't remember if Jacques Villeneuve came over and tried to run. I know Kimi Räikkönen at one point was going to try his hand at NASCAR, and I think he got about 2 races into that, and something just didn't work out. They're definitely different cars to drive, NASCARs. Not to mention, it's really rare to see someone have success in multiple types of cars and multiple series of motorsport. That's why you see somebody like Tony Stewart, who retired from NASCAR last year. Obviously, he was a NASCAR champion, won a lot of races in NASCAR, but he was also a champion IndyCar driver. And so, I'm not sure if there's been a driver who has excelled so much in 2 different forms of motorsport like that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can run the risk of taking it off airplane mode here, because I know that's going to put me into the red. And hopefully it pops up. Yep, good. Got an ad. Ooh, Walking Dead. Okay, I guess I actually have to press something here. Alright, whatever. 15 seconds. I'm sure some zombie will, get me or something. Okay. And there we go. Let's cut it off again and carry on. So we're going to do this one. Okay, so let's look at the customization real quick. We'll just spin it around right here. Not many of the things that I do on customizing my cars are terribly original, and this one is definitely not original. If you look online for a GTR racing livery, you'll find one that looks very similar to this. The colors might be a little different and that sort of thing, but it'll look very similar to this. So I used the candy red paint, and then I used a handful of vinyls. Lowered the car a little bit with the rims. I thought it looked silly like that with the rear end lower, so I actually I raised the rear up so that it would be the same height. But yeah, there we go. And so let's go ahead. Let's see what 5 laps at Hockenheim looks like. Obviously, I'm winning, so the bots are getting faster. That wasn't the fastest of the bot cars, but it's definitely not the slowest. I think there's only 2 or 3 bot cars that are faster than the one that's racing now. And just kind of watch how they go into this first turn and this silly, like that ridiculous turn that they make. That's actually a good place to cut the corner a little bit on this track. I think this may actually be a pretty challenging race now that I'm up to the the faster cars. I think the biggest catch is going to be whether or not we catch the rear of the field. Anytime you catch the back markers, you're pretty much, as long as you can remotely catch up, you're pretty well guaranteed to get a win. You saw me swing really wide on that turn. That's sort of a I don't want to say a secret, but it's something that's little known with the way Hockenheim is engineered in the game. You can go very, very far out to the left of the curbing on that last turn sequence and not be off track. If you try it in the McLaren, what is it, the MP4X, that prototype IndyCar thing, you can actually take that whole last sequence without even touching the brakes if you get it right. So that's obviously that's very interesting to try. But what it does is it allows you to maintain a little bit more speed coming onto the front straightaway, because you don't have to get on the brakes like I did there. If you see this bot here, Darkness, or however you want to say his name, this is one of the fastest bots. There's only a couple that I can think of offhand that are faster. There's one that's like, I gave him the little chrome horn there, getting into the corner, just kind of moved him out of the way. There's Auralpod, Auralpod, however you say that, and another one is Dr. Periwinkle, which is just fantastic. And actually, what I think I've noticed, and I'm not sure about this, if you're to the point that you're so fast on a race, I think the system will actually start to put the low-ranking bots in at the top of the field. So you'll end up with like Moises, or what's that other, the Marcel, the British guy with the French last name. You'll end up with those guys at the front of the field, which is really strange. I've only had that happen a few times, mostly because I never run the races enough to get to that point. I think the time it happened was on one of the races in Endurance Champions, which those are races that I run, especially the 10 lapper there. I run that race so infrequently anymore because even having the Nismo fully upgraded, I can't keep up with the times that people on my friends list have set, and so I just don't run it. I will run the 9-lap race. I can win that one, or my preferred race is the 10-lap race in Endurance Kings, because that one with the standing start is a much easier race. I mean, I can cut the first turn, the little chicane sequence. I can chop that off and just go around the cars and really be in first place by the first lap. So it's much easier than the one in Endurance Champions, which is really it's really taxing with team cars in it. I guess if I wanted to sign out of Facebook and go through the hassle of slowing the cars down and all that, it would be a much easier race to run. That's actually pretty good. I got through 5 laps on a little short track like that with both headlights still working. That's usually my my goal on a night race is to try and get through it with the headlights intact. And so now we're on to the last race in this one. I think I've looked online, and this 100% in this Nürburgring, just the best track on the game. I want to say 100% completion pays 21 gold, which is actually the cost to fully upgrade the entire car, and that's why I think there's going to be very few people who don't just fully upgrade this car right off the bat, because it is so cheap. But so with 100% paying 21 gold, that means pretty much everything else is just a bonus. So, I think it's 36 gold or something like that, 32 gold maybe, that you get for the combined, 25, 50, 75%. So, all things considered, that's actually not bad. It's obviously, it is very, very rare that they put out a car that is profitable, and this one is. So, looking at it on the whole, this has actually been not a bad update. I've said it. There's been a lot of talk online. Some people were annoyed that you only got a recompletion bonus for I think it was 6 gold. It could have actually only been 5. You only got a recompletion bonus for the 1-to-1, but then you have a series like this where you can get the car for pretty much nothing, and then you turn a profit in the series for driving. And then you had the one with the rally car thing that turned a profit. And then the sponsor deals with the other Nissan are pretty good. I don't actually think I fully upgraded that car. I didn't really see the point at the time. I mean, I may eventually, but I think I just upgraded it to whatever was necessary to complete the series. And as I went through that one, I did that one with the surface fully in the red. Just because the service is way too long, and I was planning to do this one. I didn't want to have to sit there and watch 6 or 7 ads, because some of those races are a little bit longer. I have to say, I know it adds a little bit of realism to the game, or whatever, but I'm not the biggest fan of these various lighting conditions, evening and morning and night and all that. I just, unless you have a specific purpose, like in Endurance Champions, it actually had a good purpose, because they sort of take you through the way the actual 24-hour race is run. There's a shorter sequence in the daylight on the first day, and then you get evening, and then you get a longer section at night, and then you get a kind of an extended morning segment, although in reality the night segment would be longer, and then you get a much longer day segment. So I think it tells a little bit of a story the way they did it there. But I mean, for this, there's just no purpose in having to drive this race at night. It does nothing for sort of the storytelling of the game. It does very little for the race itself. I guess you could say it makes it a little more difficult, but it just makes it difficult in a kind of a silly way. This the sequence I just came through right there, little S sequence. They changed the name of that a little while back, named it after Michael Schumacher. Obvious, great F1 driver. I haven't looked up recently to see what his condition is. I know, I do know he's still living, but I'm not sure what his condition is, because he had a pretty significant brain injury skiing, which, it's always, obviously the people that we consider to be heroes, or whatever you want to call them. I don't really like using the word heroes. For people, for athletes and stuff like that. I know they sort of can be, but that's another matter. 2 minutes and 12 seconds. It's like you need a sundial to measure lap times with this thing. But anyway, with Schumacher and any race car driver, it's terrible to think about these guys that went out and ran races. And of course, for the first many years Schumacher drove, race car drivers didn't really run restraints on their heads and that sort of thing, and that's why you did have so many really terrible injuries. Obviously now, race car drivers are really fastened into the cars. But you know, it's just crazy to think about. He ran all those races for all those years, probably had who knows how many crashes, and you know, came through relatively unscathed. I mean, I'm sure he had some concussions in there that didn't get noticed because of, you know, the medical procedures at the time. But and then he, you know, was just out on vacation skiing and has an injury, and now he's the last I heard, he was really pretty bad off. You know, still, I guess, still functionally alive, but not, you know, not really living, if you will. So I'm not sure if that's still the case. I haven't looked that up in a little while. All right, so let's see what we get for series completion here. 9 minutes for 4 laps. Yeah, need a calendar. And that's, you know, down into the red. That's fine. I'm going to put it in for service. You know, obviously, since I'm not going to take it back out of airplane because I don't need to. So I guess I have to hit continue here for it to count down. And so there we go. And obviously that puts me back to 100% in the Pro-Am category. I had gotten it, you know, I was at 100% before this update, and then, you know, they had the new series. Okay, let's see what we have here for the Group A. We'll go all the way over here. You see the sponsor deals. I just have the one red one to get. And I'm sure that'll be in either 21 or 22, the tier. So, now why did I service that? And I actually forgot I had fully upgraded this thing. I don't actually remember why I serviced this car. There may have been a speed snap or something. I think it might have been the speed record at Melbourne. There was some reason up here in one of those later tiers that I wasn't able to finish. So obviously with this one, because I ran them all unserviced, and I don't want to have to watch the advertisements. Once I get to the end of the race, I'm going to do sort of my standard thing and park at the finish line and win by as little distance as I can. This race on the short little track here at the Porsche test track, I'm definitely not going to run it into the red for service here, but one of the other races I'm sure will. I actually forget why I finished second in this race. I think I was trying to do the stop at the finish line thing and actually forgot where the next car was, and he ended up passing me, and I just didn't feel like going back and doing it. I ended up on a couple of races towards the end actually forgetting that I was trying to save them for completion, and ended up winning those races rather than, you know, finishing second or third, something like that. This is a fun little track to drive. I don't mind the Porsche track just for fun, but it's not a racetrack. This is one of the more interesting tracks when it comes up in the weekly time trial tournament, because there's so many places that you can do things. Coming off this corner, you can actually be really out to there. You saw how far pretty much off the track I was, and that doesn't score as a foul, doesn't score as being off track. So, that's interesting. That's actually one of the more interesting things about the game is, just how far off the, if you were actually driving a real racing car, how far off the track you can be and still be considered on track in the game. And of course, that's a huge thing for the guys in the time trials, because it almost doubles the width of the track in some places. All right, let me pause it here, go ahead and get this sort of set up so that I can, obviously I'm almost to the point of lapping the field. Probably could if I had 5 laps. The issue here is actually going to be getting to a safe enough distance that I don't get rear-ended across the finish line. I have had that happen before. One of the more fun things actually during the they did something to change the physics with the McLaren update and made the robot cars much more aggressive. And so they would pretty much run right into the rear end of you if you were stopped on the track, whereas now they'll do all kinds of funny stuff. It's pretty funny to watch, but I used to would actually stop in the middle of the track in what I knew was the racing line and actually just let the cars rear end me across the finish line. It was kind of funny. Sort of amazing the funny things that we'll do to entertain ourselves. So that didn't go very much into the service at all. With 5 races, though, there's no way that I'm going to be able to finish it. And actually, I think for the first, you know what, I'll just leave it in a tilt B. For the first couple laps here, I actually want to see if I can do the laps flat out, because there is an endurance race at Indianapolis on this speedway in this car, which should be a really fun race to drive. Obviously not as fun as the one in the GTR, the P1, the McLaren P1 GTR, but I think it would be a fun race, especially if this car has enough grip to get all the way around the track without braking. And I guess we're going to find out right about. Okay, so this should actually be really really interesting. Okay, so I lost the back end there. We'll have to see if that's a common thing. It might just be a matter, well, maybe not. I was going to say it might just be a matter of getting the right line into the turn to see if it's something that the car can take flat out. It's almost certainly not. But either way, this actually should be a fun car to try to race in that endurance race. I don't know how much distance we'll be able to get. I know somebody has said they've gotten close to 50 miles. That's pretty good. It'll all depend how much it pays, really. I'm sure it won't pay very much. The endurance race in the P1 GTR, you know, it doesn't pay much at all. I think it pays 300 fame per lap, which is into the back of him, which is really terrible, because the race, the FXXK race at the Porsche test track pays 600 per lap, and the lap is half as long. So really, it pays, you know, almost quadruple the amount of fame that you get in the P1 GTR. Although the level of thought that goes into running a race around this track at Indianapolis is far different than what you have to do, you know, in the FXXK. Obviously, I'm not running this race really, you know, paying attention. I've got him, you know, beat terribly. I may actually be able to lap him, which would be kind of funny, because then actually I'm definitely going to lap him. So that's going to be interesting, because now I'm just going to park it at the finish line and wait for him to basically do an entire lap before he comes back. Now I wonder if I put high assists on, could I hold it through some of these corners? I may try that. Figured I should probably get into the wall there to make sure I wasn't about to go too far. Switch the camera view here. You know, that's probably a detail that not too many people notice on the game. If you actually look at a lot of the things on the game, it's pretty amazing the amount of detail that they have, because, I mean, right there, you actually see on the racetrack, you can see the bricks, the 3-foot wide section of bricks that they left at Indianapolis after they repaved the track. So that's actually really cool that, you know, they put in that level of detail, that you can see the individual mortar joints and stuff like that. So that's really cool. And there we go. Alright, won that one by as little a margin as possible. And let's, oh, I actually didn't think it would get that close to the red there. Anyway, Dubai National, that's a fun track. Daytona and Silverstone. I'm actually going to run Daytona first because it is the most difficult one of the three to run with the service in the red, just because, you know, it's so fast. There's so few places that the cars brake. Although you can see the robot cars on the brakes there through the tri-oval, which, you know, there's really no car on the game that can't make it through that section of track flat out. You know, not even, yeah, pretty much everything can make it through there. While I don't dislike this version of Daytona, it is my least favorite of the three. I think probably the Super Speedway is my favorite, and then the road course, and then this one. You know, I guess the Speedway section is my favorite because I'm a NASCAR fan, so it's cool. Like most people, I really wish they had more tracks on the game. I think that's the biggest thing wrong with NASCAR on this game, is it's just a lack of tracks, lack of variety. I mean, yeah, everybody says the cars are the same, which they are, but, you know, that's not the big deal. The big deal is that we just don't have enough tracks to race them on, so you end up running Daytona and Indianapolis over and over and over again. And Indianapolis, had they worked out the physics model right, would actually be a very fun track, because when they actually race there, you know, guys will get 204, 205 miles per hour down the two main straightaways, but then they have to slow it down to about 170 to get through the turns. So I think that would be a lot more fun had they done that. But the way it's set up now, where you can run flat out around the entire track, that's just not fun. It's really silly. Even the Indy cars, with all their with their downforce, you know, even they can't run flat out around the track, you know, and they're probably, they probably have close to double the amount of downforce and about 2/3 of the weight. So that's why when you take those cars to Texas or places like that, it can be really dangerous. Obviously, we saw that a few years ago at Las Vegas, where you ended up with Dan Weldon getting killed. They just had a massive pile up. And obviously, there was a couple other drivers that, you know, could have been hurt really bad. It's really fortunate in that race, that wreck, that Will Power didn't get hurt badly, because his car almost went up into the catch fence too. I think it just goes to show, you know, doesn't matter how much safety precautions you put in the car. There's only so much you can do, and just, I mean, even this past weekend at the NASCAR race in Kansas, you ended up with a guy, pretty good driver. His car is actually in the game here. It's the 43 Richard Petty car, Aric Almirola. Got in a really bad crash and broke a disc in his back. So, really, obviously that's a bad deal for him, and it's just it goes to show that there's only so much you can do as far as safety in the cars. So obviously that was not a good thing. You know, I was watching that live, and you know, as soon as the wreck happened, I messaged a friend of mine, the guy I went to Daytona 500 with, and I was like, man, this guy just got in a bad crash. You ought to turn it on. I didn't actually expect it to be quite as bad as it ended up being. But it certainly wasn't good. They had to cut him out of the car and all that sort of thing. Just a moment here. Okay, and back. Yeah, I saw him having to cut Almirola out of the car. You know, they had the jaws of life out and all that. So that was a pretty scary situation all the way around. Definitely not the kind of wreck that you really expect to see in a race. Not nowadays. Used to be quite frighteningly common to see you know, big wrecks like that, but you know, now it's gotten far less common, and obviously that's very good. All right, see if I can get these last two races in. Didn't realize that it had been quite so long as it's been, so I'm not going to run the last race, the one I was going to do with the McLaren. This one I should actually be good to go to just run it to the finish. However it turns out, because with the service in the red, it's not going to be that big of a deal to run it. So as you can see, even with the car all the way in the red, you know, I still got to the front pretty quick. I guess that's a benefit of being fully upgraded, even though the service is all the way down. You know, I didn't actually look to see if it took the service all the way into the red. Oh, I guess it would have, because it only really had like one bar left in the green after Indianapolis. So, yeah, I'll run this one out. However it finishes is how it finishes. Silverstone is a really easy track to try to win on if you have to, because there's a few places that you can cut huge amounts off the track. So that's no big deal. And so obviously the red badge didn't come at Daytona, so it's going to be in the 22nd tier. That's usually pretty normal. Usually comes in the very last tier, but sometimes it'll come in the second to last one. And if I'm being honest, I really hope that race is not that long. I think I might have saw that it was 4 laps, but I wasn't really paying attention. Halfway done, and I think I saw one of the I guess maybe I didn't, but I thought I had saw one of the back markers up ahead. It wouldn't actually be greatly disappointing to me if we didn't catch one of them, but I feel sure that that we will. May hear some sirens outside. I'm actually not sure how good the pickup is. You may hear them. I guess maybe somebody, who knows what happened. In a big city, you never know what you might find, what you might hear. There's actually a pretty significant highway not too far away, so always possible that it could be a crash out on the highway. Alright, so I guess I'm just going to go ahead and win this one. You know, obviously it's going to be by a huge margin. I'm almost going to win by a lap. Not quite a lap, but very close. And so we'll just, hopefully I can win that last race without having to cut the corners, because I don't actually like cutting the corners. It's really not that much fun. Alright, here we go. So this should get the 100% completion and the sponsor award. And it's 5 laps. That's a little more than I would like it to be, I guess. But we'll see. and just look at that move that the cars made. I mean, it's just unbelievable that they've programmed these cars to do that. I don't, it just doesn't make any sense at all. So yeah, I don't think this one will be too hard. I mean, obviously we're in 6th place by the end of, the first sequence here. Now 5th, I guess. I guess I'll win this one by a pretty significant margin, and then we'll be off. I really hope this is not a long race. You know, 7 minutes or something would be nice. Obviously, I ran off the track there. I probably would have been able to take 3rd in that little sequence had I not run it off the track. Sometimes I drive like that, sometimes I don't. Right then, I just really didn't feel like messing with the car. I knew that that the robot driver there would squeeze me off over on the track, so I just didn't feel like fooling with it. This is certainly one of my favorite tracks on the game, Silverstone. Definitely not my most favorite, but I'm actually not sure what my most favorite track is. But Silverstone's probably in the top 5, I guess, if I had to rank them. I suspect Monza would be up there, Spa, Panorama. I don't know what I would have round out the top 5. Maybe Daytona. In spite of my good reviews for Hong Kong, I wouldn't have Hong Kong in the top 5. Top 10 probably, but not top 5. I think Hong Kong is just a different track from what we're used to on the game. And then I think it was released with a bunch of cars that were very expensive and were all sort of similar and really need more tracks to run on. I would actually like to see those tracks run on Richmond. I think they have Richmond in the game, but they never use it. It's very rare that you see Richmond in any sort of a series, which is kind of sad because I think it would be perfectly suited to the Formula E cars. It's really short. You're on the brakes a lot, so on and so forth. But anyway, they didn't put it in, and so we're left without it. So I'm actually not sure. I didn't do the math before I started on this. I almost wonder if this will put me back above 4,000 gold. So it should be at least 75. I guess we'll see. I guess we will see. About another 2.5 laps. Stretching out a pretty good lead here. Sadly, just sort of marking off the time now, trying to just finish it up. You know, I feel like you end up with a lot of races that end up like that, where you're just sort of ticking off the laps. In a lot of ways, that's why I'm running with the assists on and tilt A, just to, you know, mark the time and be done with it. And it's not like I dislike the car. I actually don't mind the car, but I didn't actually realize that I'd been playing for as long as I have. I mean, the video I noticed a while back is, you know, an hour and 5 minutes or something. And that's what it was then, so, you know, it's up over that now. So I didn't realize I was going that high. I guess that's what happens when you're, you know, driving that car that was just so incredibly slow. But anyway, lap and a half to go. Oh, in other racing news, I saw that I think he's a MotoGP driver, Nicky Hayden, got in some sort of really bad crash on his bicycle. Actually got, you know, run down by a car, and the last update I had on that, and I think this was just yesterday or today, you know, or earlier today, was that he's in like a medically induced coma. So obviously that's not good. Another one of those crazy situations that this guy's a, you know, a race driver driving, you know, racing motorcycles, and, you know, almost gets killed in a crash on his bicycle. So tough deal there. You know, definitely thinking about some peace and stuff for him and all the people around him. Really, more so the people around him. He's just sort of there. It's everybody that's around him that needs, you know, needs all the peace and calm and that sort of thing. I guess it's just one of those things that makes you realize that, you know, even though we see them on TV and all that kind of stuff, these guys aren't. They're not superhuman. You know, you got to be mindful. Got to be diligent of what you're doing. And not saying that he wasn't. Obviously, I don't know what the person in the car, you know, you never know. They could have been just any number of things that could have happened. You know, I won't make a comment on it because I don't want to act like I know it or something. But yeah, you just never know what can happen. And well, anyway, back to this little game we're playing. Pretty jarring. Just change the pace here, but anyway, the last sequence here, coming down onto the main straightaway, and then we're gonna be done. Like I say, I wanted to run the race in the P1 GTR. I had started off with the intention of doing it, but I didn't realize quite how long these races were taking. You know, I'm basically at an hour and 20 minutes. I didn't realize I was that far. So anyway, let's just carry on. Last sponsor deal. Let's see. Okay, and we'll go collect that in a minute. Go ahead and put it in for service. The other one's done. So that obviously gives a bit of a timetable for how long it took to finish those 5 races. About 30 minutes. 29 gold. That's a good one. And I will be just shy. Alright, let's go ahead and see what we got. 50 gold. Always good. and a new livery. Okay, anyway, let's see, did I actually buy all those? Yep, sure did. Okay. Here we are, back to 100% in the Pro Series again. 100% Expert, 100% Master, and then obviously you have Elite and Legend, where I'm nowhere close to 100% in those. I mean, even though I'm 89% in Elite, it would probably take I don't know, 3,000 gold or something just to finish Elite. But anyway, hope you had fun watching, and I'll be back around sometime later with some more videos, maybe to close out the Nissan series. Have a good day.